Hello and welcome to this module titled Activating Learners that was designed and produced by GoTeach11. Your journey starts here. In this course, you'll learn different methods to activate your learners. You'll also create an engaging hook that follows your daily lesson objective. You'll show your learning for this module by designing and performing a 10-minute mini lesson. In the mini lesson, you must apply some of the activation techniques that you'll learn in this module to engage students in the day's learning. During this time, students should be actively involved in portions of the activation task. You won't need any of your books for this module, but you will need to access a document and video that we provide. Now that we know our objective and how we'll show our learning, let's blast off. So, you've created a lesson objective for the day. You shared it with students, you've let them know how they'll be measured, but you begin to notice some faces looking at you like the one in this picture. Why should I care? A student might be thinking. One thing that surprised me when I began teaching was that not all students shared the same drive I did when I was a student. I found that some students needed a bit of motivation to truly interact with the learning for the day. The activation process in a lesson follows the objective and comes before really diving headfirst into the content. The activation process, sometimes called the hook or engagement piece, serves as a transition from the objective to the core learning. The activation builds interest, connects the content to students in a way they find palatable, and addresses student motivation and willingness to learn. The beginning of class is arguably the most important in making the learning intentions clear and creating excitement for the day's learning. Dave Burgess, an educational author we'll hear from today, sums it up nicely when he says, "Provide an uncommon experience for your students and they will reward you with an uncommon effort and attitude." Let's take a moment to pause and really gain a better understanding of what the activation, engagement, or hook portion might look like. In your Canvas resources for this module, we've included an article that discusses what the engage portion of a lesson looks like within the 5E model. Just so we're on the same page, the 5E model is a unit or lesson design framework that some schools choose to follow. Pause the video and read over this short article. As you read, consider how you can actively involve students in your activation task by having them share what they know or what they've experienced in relation to the topic of learning. One of the key points from the article is that before diving deep into direct instruction, we need a plan for some sort of attention getter. Pirate persona education author Dave Burgess details several ways to hook students in his book, Teach Like a Pirate. Stop and locate the video of Dave Burgess in your Canvas resources. As you watch the video, consider the metaphors Dave Burgess uses to validate the activation portion of a lesson. Begin thinking about how you might help engage students in the learning you established from the standards-based objective module. To truly capture the attention of your audience, it's super helpful to know what moves them, what interests them, and what sorts of activities they participate in outside of school. The more you know your students, the better you can appeal to them. In the next slides, we'll discuss different ideas to hook your students. Consider which one, or combination of a few, would work best to activate learners in your mini lesson after you share the objective. The first activation technique is appealing to students with some sort of visual. You've heard the saying, "A picture's worth 1,000 words," so why don't we show them an image and have students discuss what they notice or why it's significant? Maybe the image is a historical photo, or maybe it's a piece of art that depicts the theme of a story you're reading. When I grew up, I remember looking at film reels to watch videos, but now it's super easy to pull up a video from YouTube, as long as it's not blocked, and show students something related to the learning. Imagine showing students a chemical reaction and asking students to predict why the compounds acted a certain way. Or perhaps you show students a short video of how the Great Pyramids in Egypt were constructed, and then follow up with having them try to calculate the weight of a pyramid. Some websites, such as Google Earth and Nearpod, have virtual reality or VR functions that allow students to see what a famous location looks like, which is a powerful immersion tool to help students gain a better understanding of the setting of a text. No matter what you show them, the content needs to relate to the targeted learning and you should find ways to get students talking about what they see. In addition, use caution and screen whatever you show to ensure all content remains appropriate. The second activation technique relates to auditory appeals. It's surprising how much students enjoy hearing about your personal life. If you're not careful, this can ultimately waste time and derail the class from their learning intentions. However, when you could share an experience you've had and it ties to the learning, you're not only helping students build stronger connections, you're also building stronger relationships. Stories about places you've traveled, things you've seen in a museum, and life lessons you've learned can all hook students into the topic of learning. Another technique is playing ambient sounds, or the sounds of a particular setting such as a beach. This can help students imagine what it's like to be in a certain place. Having students close their eyes, listen to the sounds, and then leading them to write or share their thoughts with a partner could be a powerful experience. Perhaps you can hook students by presenting them with an urgent message from the point of view of a historical figure, literary character, scientist, or person of significance, which can help students into a problem-solution scenario that drives the learning for the day. Finally, a simple yet effective activation task is posing a discussion question to the class that's related to the learning, then having them turn and talk to a partner about what they think about the question. As students share, you could walk around to hear what they're saying, and then have a good idea about which students to call on to lead a whole class debrief. The third technique centers around kinesthetic appeal and incorporating movement or touch to your activation task. Bringing in real objects, such as fossils, or an object that connects to literary symbolism can spark curiosity. Dramatic reenactment of something you've previously read or learned about serves as a fun transition to new learning and allows you to get creative with the furniture and items in your room. Maybe you have the students draw to predict what will happen next in a cause and effect relationship. You could find ways to involve movement, such as having pairs or teams of students work together through a scavenger hunt that reviews lab equipment, or takes them to different locations within a visual timeline. Or perhaps you take students on a mini field trip outside the school to classify characteristics of different plants they see, or even have a competition to see who could count the most number of tiles in a specific area accurately. Sounds like a blast. Our fourth technique is pretty self-explanatory, sharing text. This can be a quote or a short passage from something that you've read that you want students to discuss together before moving on to something related or writing an essay about. Maybe you bring in a poem that shares a theme with something you're learning, or you share something you've read that contains a teachable moment and have some sort of book talk. Having students imagine they're in a specific historical context and then showing them a primary source document, such as an account from what Hernando Cortez saw when he first encountered the Aztecan Empire, can strengthen students' understanding and get them excited to learn more. Song was mentioned in auditory appeals, and we have lyrics on this slide because the focus can be on reading the text and discussing what a specific line or set of lines could mean. Our final set of recommendations for the activation portion of a lesson relates to the real-world connections between the content and students' personal lives. Connecting learning to current events or hot topics, not the clothing store, shows that the learning matters and we're still trying to solve these problems today. Relating the content to something adults do in the workforce or relating it to money has the same sort of effect. Presenting students with an authentic problem, such as knowing how much wood to buy for the perimeter of a garden box you're working on at home, helps create memorable experiences. Food or drink can fall under the category of kinesthetic appeals, but we've placed it here to make the connection of bringing in real-world objects students are familiar with to make a specific point. Maybe it's deciding whether or not ramen is healthy in a health class by analyzing the nutritional facts, or identifying where a product comes from and discussing what it took to get to the grocery store in an economics class. Some of the best real-world connections appeal to the social, emotional aspects that children face. Creating opportunities to talk about healthy relationships, being honest, standing up for what's right and true in the face of negativity, and being willing to take a risk allow you to lead safe conversations about life lessons and tie them into the context of the day's learning. Congratulations, you did it! You've learned about the importance of engaging students at the beginning of your lessons and have heard several techniques for activating learners. Let's review the proficiency rubric one last time to see how you'll show your learning within the context of a 10-minute mini lesson. Let's review the proficiency rubric one more time. You know that you'll need to create an activation task. The activation task should not be a worksheet, a crossword puzzle, or a word search, as these generally do not motivate nor inspire willingness to learn. For that extra challenge, tie in real-world applications or social-emotional connections. Here are a few tips to help get you on your way to creating an activation task. Consider the daily lesson objective that you crafted in the previous module. Forecast learning tasks that would occur in the lesson that ultimately help students master the I will portion of your lesson frame. Then think about what you'll need to do at the very beginning of the lesson to motivate, inspire, hook, and engage the students in the topic of learning. We mentioned lots of different options in this video, but please feel free to conduct your own search for extra content related to your topic of learning. This is your opportunity to show a bit of your personality and really try to connect the content with the students. So be creative, but also purposeful in that you're setting up students for the day's learning. Students shouldn't just be passive listeners during this time. They need to be involved. This can happen by having them turn and talk, asking them questions, or having them create a written response that helps guide a conversation with a partner. Thanks for watching Activating Learners that was designed and produced by Region 11 Education Service Center. Your attention to building strong hooks will go a long way in showing that you not only care about your content, but your students as well. Planning for these sorts of tasks will help you stand out from good to great. This presentation referred to materials from this slide. Images were taken from Pixabay, Haiku Deck, and 123RF.